Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. We have some of the interesting news coming from the Russian Federation. There were some of the kabooms recorded kind of far away from Ukrainian border. Well, let's review the story. I'm speaking about this region of the Russian Federation. It's called Tatarstan, and the capital city of this republic is Kazan, which actually plays a great role for the Russian military in the war against Ukraine, because in Kazan there are multiple of the military factories, including one of the biggest powder factory on the territory of Russia. And as you can see, it was definitely a long way for Ukrainian drones to reach Kazan. And here we see a Ukrainian drone which hit one of the tallest buildings in Kazan. Yeah, you may say what's the use of this building, but Russians stated that they've intercepted Ukrainian drones, so maybe it was like that. Maybe they did it on purpose using electronic warfare or something like that. However, at the same time, it could be done for purpose by Ukraine. I think that the main idea now for Ukraine is to transfer this war on the territory of the Russian Federation, to make the Russian society feel it. By the way, no casualties were reported, so everything was fine. But the videos from Kazan are quite interesting, and the Russians, believe me, they do afraid now, because Ukraine has long hands, as you can see. And here's one more looted drone. The outcome of the strikes I published already on my Telegram channel, which you may find in the video description just below. One of the drones carried the message to the Russian occupiers, stating that it's the revenge for the yesterday's attack on Kiev. So altogether there were 8 of the kabooms recorded on the territory of the Kazan city, including the kabooms of the powder factory. The damage was done there for sure. However, mostly the images with residential buildings were shared on internet. Just a couple of days ago, Putin in his conference called the war in Ukraine some sort of the движуха, it means action. And he also called for some CERN experiments done, for example, in the Kiev city. He said that Russia may hit Kiev with Oreshnik, but Western countries should intercept that missile, and we'll see who wins. It means that he doesn't really care about people in general, whether they live in Kiev or not. And you know, today it was an experiment done by Ukrainian side in Kazan. And you know, I guess 100% Russians enjoyed this Putin движуха style now in their cities. Again, движуха means action. Yesterday on a stream I already told you why I consider Putin a pure psychopath, and yes, only psychopath may start some sort of the experiments with people and weapons just because he has unlimited power. And the motivation of Putin is kind of interesting at the same time. He is above everything. He sees himself as some sort of the gamer, you know. He likes the destinies of many of the people depend on his solo decisions. Through this press conference we understood that the war is a joy for Vladimir Putin, so he's not going to finish it. And the motivation for this war is not denazification, demilitarization or NATO, no, it's just because Putin was bored. He clearly stated it at the beginning of the conference that he needs движуха, he needs action, and now he enjoys himself a lot. So the destruction for destruction, nothing more. There is no any idea behind the Russian peace, or Ruski mir, how to call it. You know, even the worst people out there, they had their own motivation, like for example this one. Like he had his crazy ideas, but he had his own logic. Putin bored. He doesn't have logic. He is there just for war to be the war. There is absolutely nothing behind it. I guess that the psychopath portrait of Putin is more close to the old school Rome emperors who did absolutely crazy stuff, and Putin does it right now, but the Russian society is quite fine with it. And you know, in those old school times, Caligula, for example, who was crazy, was caputed by his elite. So maybe we should wait the same for Putin after all, because he's nothing more but the pure psychopath, really. Right, and now about the front lines update, we have the reference to Officer Plus. This is one of the Ukrainian commanders who usually shares the truthful information about what is happening on the front lines. Here we see many of the Russian vehicles, but those are not the armored vehicles. Like maybe this Ahmad vehicle has some CERN armor, but the rest are just usual civilian cars, which Russia started to use for their attacks. So a Russian assault convoy consisting entirely of civilian unarmored vehicles with USSR flag attacked Ukrainian positions in Pokrov's direction. The attack was successfully repelled. The car with USSR flag was given special attention with upload video in the evening. So I'm still waiting for the video, full video, and I'll publish it as well on my Telegram, because here I cannot show you the terrific, or how to call those videos, then Russian soldiers are just ambushed. And here I want to show where this strike actually happened. So this is Pokrovsk city, and here is Ukrainka. So Russia tries now to capture this village, but today, or it's better to say already yesterday, their attack failed completely. Alright, about one more failed attempt of the Russian army, this time to land their forces across the Dnieper River in Antonovka. Yes, many of the soldiers, commanders and volunteers stated that it was a devastation for the Russian army. I haven't yet received the videos from the scene, but as reports say, Russians are still floating there. And the Russian strike happened during the night time, but luckily our guys got the thermal camera, so they were able to identify the Russian assault and repel the Russian forces on time. Why Russia is doing this crazy move? Because they should understand that crossing this river is the suicide mission. It was the suicide mission for them to stay in Kherson, and now they want to send their mid waves. Well, maybe this operation was done just to deflect the attention of the Ukrainian army from the eastern direction or from Kursk. What we have from Kherson is this video, and for attack Russia used lots of the artillery. Unfortunately also the city was hit with that. My friends, by the way, if you want to support the job that I do on YouTube, you may also follow me on Patreon. I put the link for my Patreon page right in the video description below. Thank you so much for maintaining my motivation. Right now to some of the important news about the Ukrainian military support by the United States of America. The Wall Street Journal published the article about Donald Trump's decision to continue supporting Ukraine. Journalists say that they have the evidence that Ukraine will not be abandoned by the United States completely. So at some certain level, the military support of Ukraine will continue. Well, personally, I think that it could be done in a manner of loans, which could be paid by the frozen Russian assets in the Western countries. Well, that scheme should work perfectly, and the Ukraine will have even more opportunities to order particular weaponry. But you know, guys, at the same time, it's early to say. I'm still quite skeptical about the future moves of the future White House administration towards Ukraine. But you know, we have some of the clues that Trump thinks that Putin is kind of weak. Again, we clearly saw it during the press conference of Vladimir Putin. Then the Western journalist, who by the way was cut from the Russian version of the interview, asked Putin of how he wants to deal with Trump, how he wants to negotiate if Russia and Putin's regime getting weaker day by day. Journalists mentioned that Russia has enormous losses in Ukraine, that Russia lost its influence in Syria. It was clearly a defeat for Russia out there, and they're moving their bases out. The Russian economy situation is getting worse and worse day by day. So how you, Putin, want to negotiate with Trump from this very weak position? Then you cannot even liberate your own Kursk region. And you know, Putin himself stated that he doesn't know that the Russian army may liberate Kursk region. Yeah, obviously, because the second army in the world actually struggles with their army men. And you know, even Donald Trump before posted that Russia is unable to secure Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria because Russia had tremendous losses in Ukraine. So Donald Trump clearly sees Putin as a weak dictator. But Donald Trump himself, he is not weak. He is the future leader of the world's largest economy. And he is now enjoying himself with this power intoxication. You know that power is actually the heaviest drug out there. Every person who was granted the strong power want to get it again, and Trump successfully got it. And judging on the artistic type of Trump's personality, I think for Putin it will be very hard to speak with Donald Trump from at least partially strong perspective. No, I think that Trump already made his own conclusion, but you know, Trump may change his mood and his attitude with some time. So we'll see how it goes, but Putin absolutely didn't expect that Trump would mock him from the very beginning, showing that Putin is not a strong guy. But Putin obviously thinks that he is the best of the best out there. And you know, also Donald Trump calls NATO to increase the requirements for countries to pay more of the funds to support their own armies. Right now, the recommendation rate is 2% of the country's GDP, but Donald Trump wants 5% by the time that the United States of America spent roughly 3.5%. But because the economy of the United States of America is so big that 3.5% of GDP is enough to support the biggest army out there. And if it's gonna be 5%, well, that's absolutely tremendous growth. In Europe, just Poland is very close to 5% spending for their army. Now they spend 4.7%. But Viktor Orban, the Russian, or it's better to say Chinese asset, who also in a good relations with Donald Trump, say that this idea is very, very bad. What else can he say? He doesn't want NATO to be stronger, even though Hungary is part of NATO and the European Union. But personally, Orban follows completely different interest. Well, you know, my friends, actually the move to increase the support of the military is very, very good. Maybe not to 5%. They'll bargain, they will increase it by maybe 1.5% to make it 3.5%. So in general, the movement is actually in the proper direction, and I'm very happy that Orban got disappointed. And you know, there's one more politician whom we all admire. I'm speaking about Slovak Prime Minister Fico, who stated, by the way, that Zelensky wanted to bribe him with €500 million just for Slovakia to vote for Ukrainian possible NATO membership. But Fico is so honest, you know, that he refused that proposal. Well, he also mentioned that Zelensky wanted to give the funds from the frozen Russian assets, which will be confiscated in the case. And also we have the news that probably the day after tomorrow Fico is going to visit Moscow. I honestly don't understand that move from Fico. He's just a clown. Zelensky was a clown before he became politician, and now Fico from politician converted into the clown. An interesting story about one of the Russian Z military bloggers whose nickname is Sir Teens. He is the war criminal and was fighting against the Ukrainian army since 2014. Well, a couple of months ago he was detained by the Russian police and was accused for the fakes about the Russian army. And later on he signed the contract with the Russian army and was released from custody and now fights somewhere on the front lines. But you know what? He continued to publish some of the posts on his social media, including Telegram channel, where he says kind of the interesting stuff about the Russian weaponry, and here he says about the rifle AK-12, so Kalashnikov modern version of the rifle. And he even shows that the production quality of the new rifles is very, very bad. Well, this rifle is in service for the Russian army since 2018. On the paper, it's better than AK-74, but still the production quality is tremendously worse than Soviet-produced rifles. He openly calls this piece of engineering dерьмо, so it means poo, which was taken in the Russian army. And he accuses the Russian military for sabotage because they supplied those rifles. Alright, Ukrainian military intelligence works kind of interesting. What they do, they actually find ordinary Russians who have some of the issues with the Russian bank system. So they reach those Russians and they put the special tasks for them. Well, the task for the lady was to kaboom the Russian Sberbank ATMs. Yes, the video is kind of interesting here. So she took some of the benzene with her and she poured benzene on those ATMs. But in parallel, she also poured some of the benzene on herself, and then she threw the match, everything just blasted into flames. And yeah, this video I cannot show you here unfortunately, but again, Ukrainian guru works kind of interesting. I have never seen those kind of the operations elsewhere. And you know, it's not just a single case. The other woman was detained in attempt to burn down the Russian bank in Anapa. Right, we have the confirmation that North Korea sent some of the weaponry to the Russian Federation. We're speaking about those self-propelled howitzers. Well, I wish Ukraine had this huge military support with artillery shells and artillery systems as Russia now has from North Korea. As for the military supplies for Ukraine, we have the good news from Poland. They sent some of the Mi-8 helicopters, at least 2 of the units, and also Bell helicopter, kind of the old one, but still will be used by Ukraine. Why not? Guys, will you watch this box fight? I guess I will. It will happen in a few hours. I just need to find how I can watch it. Usyk versus Tyson, revenge, rematch you may call it, but this fight could be interesting. I like Usyk now because he changed his mind and now he's very supportive towards his own country, towards Ukraine. Here he comes out with the banner Free Azovstal Defenders. That we all should remember that Azovstal Defenders are still there in the Russian custody, in a very terrible condition in the Russian prisons. For sure, they should be returned back to Ukraine, but Russia still hesitates to exchange all of the Azov soldiers. And it's for the world to remember about Ukrainian prisoners of war. And by the way, not just the Azov soldiers, all of the Azovstal defenders, there were also border guards, police, so many of the units. I'm telling you guys, Mariupol was very important for Ukrainian defense in general during the first weeks and months of the war. Russia was forced to concentrate huge amount of the forces trying to get Mariupol under control. But what they did, they've just perished the city, but by defending Mariupol, Russian forces were not advancing elsewhere in the east or from the south towards Zaporizhia, for example. Because you know, all of those territories except of Mariupol were taken in a matter of days, so someone in Ukrainian command really demined the ways out for Ukrainian army. It was the huge betrayal, and even now there was no prompt investigation done, and we don't know the surnames of the people responsible for that. Well, I think just the next Ukrainian government will try to find out the reason why it happened, and it will be only after the war is over. Well guys, with that, I'm gonna keep you updated on situation in Ukraine, and not only, and please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.